So remember that time a couple months ago when I did my video about the NRA and touched on how certain credit card companies were cracking down and not providing services to certain gun stores or pro-gun retailers? And then remember how I touched on this article from the New York Times that basically accused all credit card carrying people of being potential shooter ticking time bombs? It even included a little timeline of when James Holmes bought which gun with what credit card and showed a picture of a gun next to some credit cards as some undeniable proof. The article blamed credit card companies for not stepping up and tracking purchases and claimed that if these companies only spied on their customers just a teensy little bit and then provided that information to law enforcement, we'd never have a mass shooting ever again. After all, we should do everything but address things like poor access to mental health care, or the times the government didn't actually put criminal data into the NICS database the way it should, or the fact that most shooters had previous violent histories that went ignored, or even the fact that criminals are gonna criminal. I mean, it says right in the article that before Aurora, a psychiatrist was thinking of having Holmes involuntarily committed for homicidal ideation and then just didn't. Situations like that are exactly why laws around hospitalization exist. But despite all that, the men and women of Washington have found an even better solution. Instead of addressing any of those issues, let's instead turn credit card companies into the financial NSA. That'll work.
That is the worst idea I've ever heard in my life, Tom.
Yes, it's horrible, this idea.
Before I continue with today's story, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsors. And yes, there's a couple today. First, today's video is brought to you in part by USCCA. USCCA is here to protect you, giving legal and financial protection for gun owners and their families. Members also have access to an entire library of educational videos, personal instruction with USCCA certified instructors, and, most importantly, peace of mind. This video is also brought to you in part by me. Liberty Doll merch is hot off the presses and will be available for purchase soon if it isn't already. Check the bottom of the screen here in case there was an update since I filmed this video. After all, where there is a demand, the market will provide. On a mug or t-shirt. And back to our show. This Times article came out back in December of 2018, and at the time, credit card companies were resisting this plan. According to the Times, banks and credit card networks say it is not their responsibility to create systems to track gun purchases that would allow them to report suspicious patterns. We do not believe Visa should be in the position of setting restrictions on the sale of lawful goods or services, said Amanda Pyers, a Visa spokeswoman. Our role in commerce is to efficiently process, protect, and settle all legal payments. Asking Visa or other payment networks to arbitrate what legal goods can be purchased sets a dangerous precedent. MasterCard gave a similar statement, emphasizing its protection of cardholders' independence and the privacy of their own purchasing decisions. Wells Fargo, too, dismissed the idea outright, which the Times suggested was only because they have the NRA as a customer, rather than any moral or ethical standing on this slippery slope. Even the ACLU came out and said that weaponizing credit card companies and banks in this way is a bad idea.
Well, this is awkward.
At the time, the chief financial advisor for Wells Fargo said, "If you think this should happen, then write a law." I could be reading too much into it, but I feel like that's often the sort of default response when what you really want to say is fat chance. Fast forward to today, almost a year later, and Representative Jennifer Wexton out of Virginia has decided to give the big F you to Wells Fargo and gun owners by introducing the Gun Violence Prevention Through Financial Intelligence Act. The bill calls for banks and credit card companies to track gun purchases and provide that information to the federal government as a way to track potential mass shooters. And you know where she got such a crazy idea? That December 2018 Times article. Thanks, Andrew Sorkin. In a press release, Wexton echoed similar statements to the article that inspired her. Banks, credit card companies, and retailers have unique insight into the behavior and purchasing patterns that can help identify and prevent mass shootings. The red flags are there, someone just needs to be paying attention. Yeah, because those red flag bills are working out so well. The bill would allow the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network to request information from financial institutions for the purpose of developing an advisory about the identification and reporting of suspicious activity, so that the government can identify a purchasing pattern among gun owners who wish to commit lone wolf acts of terror and exploit the United States firearms market. Like Obama did with Fast and Furious? Maybe? This would be achieved by allowing the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network to spend a year collecting financial data from gun and ammo purchases so they can first decide what constitutes suspicious activity and then tell banks and credit card companies to track that. The whole premise of the bill is built on the assumption that it's possible to tell who's a threat and who isn't based just on credit card activity. It also assumes that a bank or credit card company can tell which activity is legal and which isn't. It also assumes that criminals and would-be shooters use credit cards for illegal purchases and will continue to do so if this bill goes through. That's a whole lot of assumptions. Historically, trying to track threats through bank and credit card data has not had very good results. Banks are already supposed to track info that they think might relate to drug or human trafficking, and there's been some problems. According to a report by the Royal United Services Institute, this effort largely resulted in banks casting wide and creative nets, such as monitoring red box purchases, Craigslist ads, large grocery bills, prepaid Visa cards, porn sites, restaurant bills, and airline travel. Make a big deposit or withdrawal from your bank account? Flagged. Give a big tip to a cam girl? Flagged. Visit porn sites more often than the government approves of? Flagged. Lobster dinner? Flagged. Cheap takeout? Also flagged. Buying Plan B? Flagged. Condoms? Flagged. Trip to the nail salon? Flagged. Prefer using an ATM to a teller? Also flagged. The report acknowledged that most human trafficking-related purchases don't look very different from normal, innocent, everyday purchases by normal, innocent, everyday people. But, as also noted in the report, financial institutions are so fearful of getting punished for not doing enough to comply with these regulations that they've done everything from terminating relationships with suspicious customers to handing over bank records to law enforcement in bulk. So instead of actually catching human traffickers, the rules mostly catch large families, sex workers, or the people who hire them, immigrants sending money to their families, and people that tend to have a lot of parties. In a time when some lawmakers think that buying more than one gun a month or more than 4 in a year is suspicious and criminal, it's easy to see how this new bill could get used and abused in similar ways. Wexton acknowledges this, in a way, stating that retail-level purchase information has been hard to obtain and hasn't been all that effective. But she blames this on the banks being unwilling to fork over information rather than the fact that they flagged too much of it. So if something similar happens, and history does tend to repeat itself, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network then needs to write a report to Congress detailing the barriers to getting this information, and then presumably figure out other ways to get it. As to whether or not this passes, Virginia is, of course, solid blue after the most recent round of Bloomberg-funded elections, and the people of Virginia have their hands full with a bunch of anti-gun bills coming down the pike, some of which I'll be discussing in later videos. But blue Virginia doesn't represent all of the folks in Congress, at least not yet, and hopefully never. It's hard to tell which way this one will go based on the fact that even though it's nothing but virtue signaling, there are similar regulations on the books that are supposed to stop human trafficking and drug trafficking, though of course they never do. Hopefully the men and women of Congress recognize this as a vast infringement on people's privacy and their rights. That is your Second Amendment and firearm news for the week. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment down below. Have a chat about all the ways that this bill can go wrong. And if you like my channel and want to help support it in other ways in this time of censorship and mass demonetization, you can do so over at Patreon, Subscribestar, or give a one-time donation through PayPal or crypto. Also, you can check out any of the affiliate links down in the description or the Liberty Doll merch, which will be coming soon or might be out already, depending on how fast this video comes out. As always, thanks for tuning in, stay safe, and happy shooting.